Welcome to Sex Afflictions and Porn Addictions. I am your host, Craig Pera from www.themindfulhabit.com. I'm the founder of the Mindful Habit System, the world's #1 at-home online addiction program for men struggling with sex and porn addiction. And this broadcast is to empower you to create healthy sexuality and a great life. And speaking of healthy sexuality, today we are going to be talking about mindful sexuality. And I have a very special guest to help me do that. He is my resident expert, our resident expert, a psychologist, graduate of the University of Adam Mickiewicz in Poznan, a recovery coach, getting certified as a psychosexologist, certified in the Mindful Habit System. He is my brother, my best friend, was a former client, Adrian Stobrin. Welcome, brother.
Thank you for having me. Hi, Craig.
So nice to see you as always. So mindful masturbation. Let's talk about that. Is first, yeah, let's start with mindful masturbation. Is that possible? Is it something that people can do? Let's. When I say mindful masturbation, Adrian, what comes up for you?
First time we talked about this concept, even you brought that up on one of the coaching calls when I was still working with you on my recovery. I remember the first thing that came up was fear. That I was afraid of even touching that area, like I was afraid that if I will connect with myself sexually again, I will go berserk, isolate, go out of control, become compulsive, go crazy. So I was really, really afraid of that concept. And, over time, it became something that I started to appreciate a little bit more. So for me,
Stop right there. Let's stay with that fear for a little bit, because I think a lot of people, listen, I know, and a lot of people listening, they come to us from a place of abstinence. They've stopped doing anything. They stopped masturbating. They got the blinders on when they're walking around outside. It's not do something, not do something, not do something. So when I introduced this concept about mindful masturbation, you were afraid. Now, what were you afraid of?
Yeah, so, I was thinking that, first of all, it felt like betraying my sobriety in some way. I felt like I had such a good streak without masturbation. I was counting days, it was over 2 years when we talked about this. So it was like long time without masturbating. And I felt, it will be some kind of betrayal of my sobriety ideals, like a step backwards in a sense. And it felt like if I do that, then what's stopping me from watching porn? What's stopping me from masturbating daily? What's stopping me from choosing masturbation instead of having sex with a partner or connecting with somebody?
So essentially, you throw out the baby with the bathwater. In other words, right. I can't do this because if I do this, that means that the floodgates are going to open and all the bad things are going to happen again. Fair?
Exactly. And at the same time, I didn't have a partner back then. It was a new territory for me. I was, separated. I broke up with my partner during that time, and I was single, and I didn't know what to do with that sexual energy. After a couple months, especially, you start to go a bit nuts, when you don't express yourself sexually in any possible way, and you are not ready for a relationship. I wasn't ready after a breakup to just jump right into something. Emotionally, I wasn't ready. So I knew that it's not a good option to me either to start dating right away.
Yeah. And, it's a tricky subject because, I'm always thinking about, what's someone thinking of who's listening? And we know there are some guys who are in this, whether it be for religious reasons or whether that they be deeply entrenched in 12 steps philosophy around not doing anything. There's also a reality that I think it's worth noting right now. And whenever I work with someone who wishes to not masturbate for religious reasons, let's say, Adrian, I tell them that good news. The only way you're going to be successful is if you go guru. Go guru.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I say that is because the bar is, there's a reason why the American Psychiatric Association says masturbation can be healthy. There's a reason why the American Pediatric Association and other professional medical or psychological organizations, their position has evolved around masturbation. It was, I think, a mental health illness back in the 30s. It's why Kellogg's cereal was invented, because it was plain and yucky, and just eat that, and that would make the masturbation go away. Some creative marketing, if you ask me. And so there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear of people masturbating, and I think this is one of the places where there is a split between the strict, rigid sex addiction proponents, and then on the other side, the sex positive. Is that community where it's, go for it. But what I learned is not all masturbation is not healthy. And so this is where this concept of mindful masturbation can be really important. So I introduced the concept to you. There was initial reluctance to it. What happened?
So I decided after some weeks of thinking about it. I decided I'm going to give it a shot without any erotica, any pornography. Just me, myself, and my body. And I remember that I was very careful with it. Like, I've chosen a day when I felt really good about myself. My fundamental 5 was impeccable. I was taking care of my diet, my exercise, my mindfulness. I felt really good and fulfilled during that day. But I was also feeling quite sexual, right, during that day. And I've chosen that this is going to be the day when I try it. And I remember first time I tried, I felt somewhat upset. I felt like I let down myself. Judgment popped up, like moral
you had a
judgment.
good streak going too. I mean, you had some days under your belt. That felt good, I bet.
Right. Like 2.5 years, that was amazing. And I felt like right away, I felt this sense of guilt that came up to me, sense of judgment, that, it wasn't as fulfilling as I thought, some anxiety. Maybe now I'm not healthy. Maybe I'm not recovering anymore. So this first time wasn't the best, because of, I think, my perception of what happened. It was an unhealthy act. I was in touch with my feelings, with my body. I wasn't running away from anything during that day, but still I felt that, somehow I judge it, right? And the next time, the second time was really great. I tried it again, and I didn't have that fear about it anymore, because it happened already. So it wasn't like this new thing that I'm introducing. And the second time was really good. I felt fulfilled. I felt happy. I felt that warmth inside of myself. And I didn't feel like I want to do more. Like what happened each time when I was struggling with porn addiction or, compulsive masturbation was, after each session, I wanted more. Like it was never fulfilling. I never felt fuller afterwards. I always felt empty. And this time it wasn't like that. And it was first time in my life, actually, when I experienced masturbation that doesn't leave me with that sense of emptiness inside. So that was really an interesting experience.
So it took a few times for you to appreciate its benefits. Is that fair?
Right, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And, when you think about the reprogramming that you're doing, I mean, just about 99.9% of every guy that comes to us is stuck in this shame cycle of PMO, porn, masturbation, orgasm. So everything is lumped into this shame cycle. It's all bad. And what you're saying is, hey, it's not all bad. You can separate the porn from the masturbation. There's all sorts of reasons why someone may choose to masturbate mindfully. Now, what does it mean to masturbate mindfully?
Right. That's a very important question. That's not something that we as guys do usually. That's what I can say in the beginning.
Yeah, it's not what we normally do.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you're not trying to abuse your body, but you're, touching yourself with gentleness. You try to touch yourself with love. You don't rush through it. Eyes opened, no fantasies. And just being in connection with yourself and appreciating yourself, in that sense. I think that's probably what women do more often, like they have that, I think, healthier perspective on touch, and also touching yourself, that it can be a celebration of your body. It doesn't have to be an isolating act or a shameful act or some kind of expression of anger or frustration. And for us guys, most often it is, just some way to just, get rid of the tension, from our mind or body. So it's very different. I think it's calmer, it's slower, it's intentional. You don't go to fantasy world. You try to be present with your body. And also, in order to appreciate that, I can tell that you have to have some sobriety under your belt. Like I wouldn't be able to stay calm with my sexuality, to be okay with that sexual energy and to not go berserk when I was just starting. I needed a lot of time to get to that place where I can appreciate that sexual energy.
The way that I like to teach part of the concept, because I don't know if there's one right, this is what mindful masturbation is for me, and that means what it is for you. But some of the guidelines that I like to teach is that like mindful breathing, when you're practicing mindful breathing, you're focus, the center of that experience is the breath. When you're practicing mindful masturbation, the center of that experience is the pleasure, is the feeling. And what happens is when you connect with that feeling and that pleasure, the mind, because we've conditioned it and trained it over decades in many cases, automatically, instantaneously jumps to the visual. And it's kind of like our relationship with our thoughts. When your mind jumps to the visual, gently bring it back to the pleasure. When it jumps to the visual, bring it back to the pleasure. When it jumps to the visual, bring it back to the pleasure. And it's a very frustrating experience. I want to put out there, anybody who's contemplating doing this, please heed Adrian's warning. Make sure you're in a good place. And the goal is to create a healthy relationship with masturbation, because everyone has a sexual optimum, and that sexual optimum, is who you are. That means everyone has a certain amount of time where they need to release, and everybody's different. Not everybody's in a relationship. And I think it's an important concept for a lot of people. Don't you, Adrian?
Right, I think so. First of all, because like I mentioned, sometimes we are not emotionally ready for a variety of reasons. Grieving, lost relationships, a lot of fear, for example. Sometimes we're not emotionally ready to start a new relationship or to be intimate with somebody. And I think in that time also, it's better to explore your sexuality than to run away from it and then watch porn when you go totally out of control, right? So I think that's important. And how's that different from porn also? I think that's important to mention. It's different because the chemicals that you release in your brain, right? The amount of excitement basically that porn creates in our minds is much higher usually than the amount of excitement that we naturally experience during sex and also during mindful masturbation. It's much, I would say, more natural thing to experience, where porn is like an enhanced experience. You have all those close-ups, women in full makeup, all this fake reality that creates excitement that can't be really replaced, in real life. It can't be experienced in a real life. So that's why it's so addictive. And mindful masturbation isn't, like you said, sometimes it's frustrating because it's not as exciting as porn, and you try to go to those fantasies, and that's when you have to catch yourself and maybe stop. altogether, just for your safety, for the sake of not going to that porn website or to that fantasy at the moment. But I think it is an important concept also for guys who are in relationships, when, I'm not speaking about the situation when you choose to masturbate because you don't want to connect with your partner. That has to change, right? That is a no-brainer for me. But sometimes guys want to have sex every second day. We talked about that on the Sexual Optimum episode. See the link in the description. Yeah. Sometimes guys want to have sex every second day, and the partner wants to have sex once a week, right? Or once every second week. And that discrepancy creates tensions in a couple. Sometimes one partner feels manipulated or pushed to have sex. It's not a healthy situation. So mindful masturbation can help us avoid that situation. You can be even present with your partner when you're mindfully masturbating. It doesn't have to be acts that is done in hiding, I think that can be a part of sexuality in a couple as well. And it doesn't have to be an activity where you steal energy away from your partner, right? It can be part of connecting with your partner, actually. So that's my observation on that, and I recommend that even for people who are noticing that discrepancy in the couple.
Yeah, it helps couples manage that mismatched libido. Mm-hmm. And this concept is so important and so powerful, I think, because a lot of people, as I mentioned earlier, come to us where it's, everything is bad. The porn is bad, masturbation mm-hmm. is bad, orgasm is bad. And introducing this concept, I think, can be a really, powerful transformation, transmutation. You're rewiring the programming around a part of yourself that has been abused, sullied, just disrespected. And this can help change that. What are some of the cons, or what are some of the risks of this approach, Adrian?
So, there are a couple of risks. One risk is related to our ability to I would say, to lie to ourselves in simple words. Sometimes we tell ourselves, oh, it's fine, I feel okay, or I don't know if my partner wants to have sex today, so I'll just masturbate. So we just develop reasons why we should do it when it's not a healthy situation, right? Or we could wait 2 hours and we would have an amazing time with our partner, right? So I think that is, that is a really important thing, that you have to be really honest with yourself and be able to cut through the illusions and really be in touch with your feelings and with your body. And that requires some practice, that requires time and healing in recovery. So that's the con, that we can really try to lie to ourselves to have more of that masturbation. Second con, I think, is that it can really go out of handle if you're not careful. So if you are you are masturbating and you notice that you go to those fantasies consistently, and then you start to maybe watch something on the screen, and then it goes downhill from there. So that's a risk as well, that when you're not really controlling yourself, you don't feel that you can be present with that energy. I would say it's better to be safe than sorry, and to stop when you notice that you are going to this fantasy realm again. So that's the risk as well. And risk of disconnecting in general. We have this tendency to numb and escape, right? So we have to be really careful whether we are doing this masturbation act to connect with our body and to experience pleasure and to love and respect our body, or whether we are doing that to numb and escape something, and it requires a lot of mindfulness, of awareness.
And honesty. Honesty.
Yeah.
This is not something, I want to be 100% crystal clear. This is something that you share with your partner.
Mm-hmm.
And another con or another risk is that and it's really related I'm just expanding upon what you said, Adrian, which is where our ability to lie to ourselves is pretty impressive. I mean, it is like just a part of being human. We can convince ourselves of just about anything. So if you find yourself using this technique to justify unhealthy sexual behaviors, to justify lying to your partner about your sexual expression, if you're using this technique to, in place of connecting with your partner, then I don't think you can answer this question in the affirmative, which always should be when you talk about sexual expression is this healthy? And if the answer is no, step back, step out of it, and maybe you're not ready for it.
Right, and the question is then alternatives, right, to that, because when guys are in relationship, the alternative is obviously to have sex with a partner. Sometimes, not always, because sometimes couples are in a really rough place and it's not possible. But sometimes it's to have sex with a partner, and that's great. That's you have an alternative, you have an outlet for your sexuality. Awesome. But what about all the other guys? I'm wondering, Craig, what could you say to all the other guys who are either single and not ready to have healthy masturbation, or in relationship, but for the moment, there is no space to have sexual intimacy with the partner? What they can do with that sexual energy that's building up in them?
Yeah, well, exercise, take care of themselves, and I might recommend this technique maybe a little earlier than others, in that so here's how this works. So I introduced this concept of mindful masturbation, and I introduce it pretty early because I believe that for the overwhelming majority of our clients, creating a healthy relationship with this part of their lives is critical on their path to healthy sexuality. So I will introduce this concept, give them an assignment to contemplate it, to try to masturbate mindfully, and meaning that this pleasure-centric experience. And here's what happens just about all the time. In fact, there's a warning label now that I give with this exercise, which is, this may sound easy. I don't know what it sounds like to you. I don't know what this sounds like to you, but I need to tell you that there is a very high chance that you are going to be incredibly frustrated, that you are going to be flashing to fantasy, or when you're without the fantasy, without the visual, you can't even perform. You're limp. And what happens is the assignment of mindful masturbation, which I do think a lot of guys like, okay, I got this. This is, how hard can this be? And then they start, and it's wow. And what it does, it has the benefit by introducing it early of highlighting just how broken their sexual selves have become, because there was a point in their lives when they were children where they were able to masturbate without pornography, like that.
Right.
That's something that they as a man were able to do, and now they can't even get it up. They're flaccid, semi-flaccid. It's a really, really difficult concept. So I like pushing that envelope a little earlier to highlight that, and then help them progress towards healthy in that part of themselves. But if they're not masturbating, exercise, practicing mindfulness, meditating, those two things are critical if you want to manage this powerful biological force inside us. What do you think?
Well, yeah, I think meditation, especially if you go deeply into meditative states, is really helpful, because you experience a sense of bliss if you're really deeply meditating. And I think that sense of bliss, it releases certain hormones like serotonin in your brain that are lowering the libido, actually. They are like, when the more serotonin you have, the less actually sexually active you want to be. That's why on antidepressants people have lower libido, right? Because they have higher serotonin, higher prolactin levels in their brain. So that happens also when you are really deeply meditating, right? It takes time to get there, but you can experience really pleasurable feelings and happiness and joy. And at the same time, your sexual drive is really calming down a little bit. So it's easier to handle. So that, for me, that helped a lot during my process of working on my sexuality. But I would say, a concept of sexual transmutation, is very important here. Like how we can, if we treat sexuality as an energy, how we can express that energy, how we can change that energy into something else. Is it even possible? And there are certain spiritual techniques that we can focus on in order to transform that energy. I was doing, I did this bowing technique we did in California together, right?
Yes,
I was doing this bowing yogic technique that, I've learned in a Zen monastery, actually. And I was doing a lot of that during my celibacy period. It was 90 days. It was really, really hard. And that exercise, it was physical, but also spiritual. It really helped me to transmute that energy. And also, the second one that I was doing was imagining that this energy coming from my genital area, the sexual energy, goes up when I'm breathing in into my heart, and it changes into like love energy. It sounds a little bit, maybe hippie-like or a little bit spiritual, but this is who I am, and that was really, really helpful for me to feel something different. To not just see people by the with the last glasses. I was seeing them with the eyes of love. I was seeing humans in them after this exercise very often. So it was really helpful spiritual activity. So stuff like that helped me. Exercising for sure. And also this, you mentioned, I remember back then when we were starting the work together, we mentioned Napoleon Hill, right? He shared something about this. Can you speak about that a little bit?
Who is that now?
Napoleon Hill.
Oh, Napoleon Hill. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So Napoleon Hill, I've been in business most of my adult life, an attorney, an executive, worked for big companies. Everyone has read, often multiple times, this Think and Grow Rich book by Napoleon Hill. It's one of the first self-help books ever written, but it seems that I skipped one chapter every single time I was assigned that book. And that chapter, for all of you listening, the book is in the public domain. You can find it online. Chapter 11. Chapter 11 is a book on sexual transmutation. And basically, Napoleon Hill's point is that, and I'm going to editorialize and improvise, summarize, and update, but the heart of his point was this: our sexual energy in us is a powerful force. It has driven men to build dynasties and skyscrapers and conquer lands. And it has also ruined dynasties and ruined men and destroyed them. And essentially at the heart of sexual transmutation is that this powerful part of us, this powerful energy, needs to be directed, needs to be channeled into creating a great life. In that, having a partner that you love spending time with, you enjoy connecting sexually with, living a life where your purpose infects, just about everything you do. So this part of you is glowing. It's a source of strength. It's a source of power. It's a source of creativity. And it's a fascinating chapter. I discovered this concept of sexual transmutation at my lowest point. It was literally, I had just been fired, just got out of a 3-day, inpatient stay, danger to myself. I wasn't a danger to anyone else. I was a danger to myself. And I was in there for 3 days. I came out. My sexual energy had destroyed me, and ruined my life, brought me to near suicide. And I read this chapter. And what was so telling about this chapter, Adrian, was it was on the, so I'm getting out, I'm like, oh man, I got to go to meetings again. I got to treat my addiction. It was depressing. It was depressing because I already been down that road, like 5 times previously in my life. And then I saw, it was the first time in my life I felt that I had read someone talking about this part of myself not being a source of shame and disgust and something that I needed to keep into this box, this Pandora's box, for fear of letting it out. The whole, everything would be ruined. It was the first time that I had seen or heard someone writing about sex being powerful. In fact, it's a chapter that I assign every one of my clients. I want them to read this dated, a little misogynistic. It's a little old-fashioned. But if you can look past that and capture the heart of it, that our sexual energy is powerful, and that power needs to be transmuted.
Right. I think that was an amazing concept for me as well. Like, I imagined my sexual energy after reading that as a river, that's just flowing through my body, and I can either learn how to, direct that river, or where to direct that river of energy, or I can just build a dam, and then the dam will break at some point. Obviously, it always breaks. So I directed that energy to creative efforts as well, to build my relationship, and also towards spirituality. So I was using all those exercises in order to elevate other areas of my life, where intimacy became like, sexual intimacy became like a cherry on the top of the cake. And before, it was the whole cake, that was the only thing I was thinking about in relationships. So definitely sexual transmutation can help us get a different perspective on sex and where it should be in our life and how to use that energy. I'm just wondering, Craig, as we're talking, how to handle mindful sexuality in a relationship, right? Like, you are in a relationship, I am in a relationship long term also. And, sometimes I think this sex in relationship is mindful and sometimes it isn't. So how are you handling that? When do you say to yourself, it's okay to have sex, or how do you handle that?
Yeah, well, I think it's important to know your sexual optimum. It's important to know your partner's sexual optimum. And mindfulness is, just to unpack that definition for a second, being in the present moment, being present, being here, not pretending you're someplace else, not eyes closed, head buried in the pillow, fantasizing about the porn scene that you had or the other sexual experience that you had, being in the present moment on purpose without judgment. So but all sex with your partner, I recommend to have a goal of being present. And I'm saying even because what I hear sometimes is, well, but sometimes, you get that urge, you just want to get in there, and, there's that animalistic primal drive. Even a better example to be present. Why would you not be present with that? Be with it, go with that, channel that energy and direct it. So I think every time you connect with your partner presents an opportunity to be mindful, and because there is so much programming. Intimacy is so hard, Adrian. Me directing that sexual energy to the person I also love for a long time, that does not compute. I was unable to do that, and so I stuffed it down and then sent it someplace else. So learning how to be present with that energy, not to be ashamed of that energy, to be able to talk about it openly and honestly and share that in an intimate way, in a fun way, with Michelle has been, one of my greatest joys.
Right. Like, I'm thinking about that because I realized after my celibacy period that now I have to kind of reintroduce myself to sex life. And it was also really scary just to come back to expressing my sexuality with a partner. And over that time, I realized that, sometimes I am connected with myself I am connected with my partner. There's this sense of love, of warmth, of respect, mutual respect, and we have great experience together. And sometimes I'm disconnected or I feel frustrated, and I choose to have sex with my partner in order to numb and escape. So I realized that even having sex with your partner can be a compulsive sexual behavior, right? It can be similar to watching porn, or masturbating to some pictures, or to, I don't know, maybe going and hooking up with an escort. So I realized that, and it took me some time just to see what are the situations when I don't really feel connected, when I don't really feel ready to open up emotionally with my partner while I'm being sexual, and to just kind of step back in those moments and say, okay, let's wait till tomorrow, when I feel better. It's not the right time. It took a lot of guts to say that as well. I felt like guys should always perform, guys should always crave sex. If your partner wants it, then you should want it as well. Like, all those like patterns of thinking were there, and it was really hard for me to say, but it was really important to recognize and respect that energy, that right now I'm not ready. I'm feeling emotionally disconnected, closed, it's not a good time. And over time, I realized, it became easier for me to just notice those moments and be mindful. So to not go to fantasies, to not close my eyes all the time and think about porn scenes, or, just to be present, to appreciate the moment and to connect, physically, mentally, spiritually with this person that I'm with my partner. So that's important area to look at also, I think, guys who are listening. Look how you are experiencing sexuality with your partner, if you have partner, and you're having sex, because it may not also be connected, it may not be loving, it may not be respectful, and all those things have to be there if you want to really heal your sexuality.
And one great way to find out is to ask, did you feel I was present? Do you feel that she was present? It's, I like to say, Adrian, that, well, first, I mean, anyone listening to this podcast have heard me say it 1,000 times. The behavior is the symptom. I've never treated anybody who's primarily had a sex problem, a porn problem. So, okay, all that's true. And I treat intimacy disorders. And what you talked about, men always feeling like they have to perform, not being able to say no to the pressures that society put on us for that penis to be rock hard. And then I'm working with some men as they get older and they're flaccid and the medication isn't working. And they, their lives are dead. No, there's lots of other things that you can do. And so, with the goal being healthy, is this healthy? Is this bringing joy to your life? Doesn't mean it's not going to bring an awful lot of tension and stress and anxiety in the beginning, but that's the hill that we're looking to climb. So your sexual expression becomes a source of joy and pleasure in your life. And there are so many opportunities that we as men have to heal that intimacy disorder, to learn how to express ourselves in a healthy, constructive way, because so much of that part of ourselves was trained in darkness, isolation, and shame. And coming to us, at this rock bottom place is an opportunity to heal in a really powerful way.
Right. I totally agree.
So, guys, mindful masturbation, mindful sexuality, healthy sexuality, mindfulness, being in the present moment on purpose without judgment. Before we wrap up, Adrian, I'm going to give everyone a way to contact you. But in closing, is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up this podcast?
Right. So, one thing I'm thinking about for guys who are a little bit more spiritual or open for that stuff, if you want to experience, this period of, let's say, you want for some time, you want to experience celibacy because you don't want to have sex or you're afraid of that, or, for whatever reason, try to look up tantric practices. They are focused on really transmuting that sexual energy into spiritual energy. It's very old, I would say, Eastern tradition. So if you don't have any reservations against that, you want to learn a little bit about how to use that energy in a different way, try that. It helped me really to stay celibate for over 3 months, and that gave me perspective on my sexuality. So for those of you who are really rock solid on I'm not going to masturbate, look at the other options and check it out. That's one last thing I wanted to say.
Yeah, and please, if you heard something on this call that sparked your interest and you're interested in working with Adrian, obviously I highly recommend it. Testimonial after testimonial calls his work life-changing, and he's been there. He's had his own problems. Now with a master's in clinical psychology, in pursuit, almost done with his advanced sexual certification. Please reach out to Adrian, and I'm going to give you a number. Get a pen ready, because I'm going to give you the number. This will get you directly. You can leave him a message. Make sure you leave your email address when you leave him a message, just because he's in another country, and I want to make sure he can get back to you. But there's 2 ways to get in touch with Adrian. Way number 1, call 1-800-214-5249. That's 1-800-214-5249, or email him, Adrian@themindfulhabit.com. He's taking on a limited number of one-on-one clients, and then a fewer less of what we call accountability clients, which is another program that he can share with you. Adrian, thank you so much for being here, brother.
Thank you very much. Thanks for a great conversation.
And for you guys out there listening, thank you so much for giving us, sharing with me your most precious resource, time, your sexual energy. Well, listen, if you're listening to us, then you already appreciate your sexual disruptive capability of your sexual energy. You can appreciate this part of you has been addicted. This part of you is out of control. So as destructive as that force can be, it has another side. It has another side, and that's what mindfulness and transmutation and some of these concepts that we talked about can help you bring, is the constructive value of this powerful evolutionary energy that sits in us men. It can be channeled and directed into creating a great life. Thank you for joining us to help you create a great life. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.